You're now listening to Crushing It for the Kingdom. Crushing It for the Kingdom. We discuss practical ways to always be on mission and how to walk out our God-given callings as world changers right where we're at. Now, here's your host, PJ at the Point.
Hey guys, what's up? My name is Jonathan Cunningham, aka PJ at the Point, and I just want to say that I'm pumped up and excited that you're here to both view and listen to Crushing It for the Kingdom. And if you're not sure what Crushing It for the Kingdom is really just any of us that are walking out our God-given callings right here on earth, right here, right now. Doesn't matter your age, doesn't matter what kind of background you come from, but if you're crushing it for the kingdom, that's who I want to talk to, and that's who I'm going to be bringing to you, and that's who I'm bringing to you today. So without anything further, let's go ahead and check in with my special guest today, Ronald Coleman. Hey man, what's going on, dude? You good?
Hey, yes sir, yes sir. How you doing?
Man, I'm doing very, very well, man. And again, I just want you to know that I'm very, very thankful for you taking the time to, come and join us today. And also, it's one of those things that I feel like that is really important that whenever I see people that I don't necessarily, have a relationship with, a really close friendship, and I know they're crushed, I'm like, man, I need to talk to that dude right there. And so that's how, if you don't know, that's how Ronald actually got onto this podcast. I saw him speaking at Fields of Faith, and I was like, man, that's someone that I really need to speak to. So I'm bringing him to you today. So Ron, why don't you just take a couple of minutes and tell us a little bit more about yourself?
Well, like you said, my name is Ron Coleman. I'm originally from Omaha, Nebraska, and I was heavily involved in sports growing up. And with that, we did a lot of traveling. My family was a traveling family. I have one brother and two sisters, so a rich wrestling family, rich wrestling history. Wrestling was a sport that I was born into, and that my family really capitalized on. Actually, my little sister was really phenomenal in wrestling as well. So to kind of fast forward some things, I wrestled, I played sports growing up, but I wasn't raised in the church. So for me, I found Christ when I was a junior in high school, which is an interesting story. But I wrestled and played football in high school. I got a scholarship to play football at Southeast Missouri State. I decided I didn't want to wrestle anymore after high school. I had a tremendous high school career. But then I moved on to play football. I played football for Southeast Missouri State. And that's where I met my wife. She is from Sikeston, Missouri, and me and my family live here now. I have one son and I have two girls, so I have a family of three, and we're just trying to make it happen. Right now I do MMA. I'm a counselor at the alternative school here in Cape, so we're just having a good time raising a family.
Yeah, dude, that's actually awesome. I love whenever, you get to know God and then God takes you to a place that you really weren't even sure that, man, like, how did I wind up here? And then you do something awesome.
Yeah.
Like, hey, guess what? I met my wife here. Now I have kids because of where God has brought me to. Now God is able to use me as a counselor. God is able to use me, in all these things. And it's just one of those things for me that I'm going like, man, that's literally what it's all about. Just take one step. God's leading us. Then I took another step, another step, another step. And all of a sudden I found the lady that God has called and brought me to. And then we're married and we have a family, and all these other things. So I just, love hearing those stories. Now, let me ask this question. You said that you became a Christian as a junior in high school. Did your relationship grow as a junior in high school? Is that where you first met him? Or where did you really become really truly on fire for God?
So it's kind of twofold. So it was actually my little sister was the one who brought family to Christ. My little sister and our neighbor. Our neighbor was a foster mother who took care of a few kids. Her name was Ruby Alfred, Miss Ruby, and Miss Ruby started taking my little sister to church when she was young, and then my mom started going 2 years before I did, and then one day I get injured. It was the about 3 days before our first football game. And she was like, this church we go to, they be healing people. And I was like, I don't know. And she was like, well, if you want to play, they can heal you. So I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to go, which was interesting because ever since I was a kid, and this is how God has a calling on your life. Ever since I was a kid, once again, I wasn't raised in church, but I told people that I was going to go to the University of Tennessee and I was going to be a youth preacher. Now once again, none of my family was raised in church, but I always kind of felt like I used to tell people I'm gonna be a youth pastor. But anyway, it's ironic how that happened. So we go to church on a Wednesday night, and the pastor prays for my knee, and I'm healed. And I was like, oh my God, this stuff is real. I can't leave now. So that's how I got into church. And 2 years after that, my dad started going. So really, my little sister was the reason why my family got into church, and that initially started me in my ministry and my God. But it's a couple of things that happened throughout my college career. I was on and off, and then later on in the interview, we'll talk about when it really hit the fan for me.
Yeah, man. So the thing that I love about this story already, and I didn't know this, okay? So I'm a student pastor, right? I'm a youth pastor. And I'm always preaching to my students, like, man, if God is not in your family, you are the representation of Christ. You are the representative of Christ in your household, right? So that means that, like, you can be leading your brothers and sisters to Christ. You can be leading your parents to Christ. You can do all these things. And I truly believe it, right? Like, I mean, in my soul, I'm going like, man, this is true. But then it's awesome for me to be able to go, hey, here's an example that I can actually use, because I have a couple others. But now here's another example that I can use to go, man, I know this other dude over here whose little sister went, and some of you may find your sister like annoying, but if she found Jesus, maybe you should pay attention to her. You know what I mean? Like those sort of things. So I love whenever I hear these stories of a student, a younger child getting and figuring out who Jesus is, bringing it to the family, and then it really just changed the trajectory of the whole entire family and your life as well. And most of the time, whenever we think of kids, whenever we think of children, we don't give them enough credit. Like, oh, well, maybe they would have the ability or they're capable of literally transforming or bringing Christ, who will transform a whole entire family unit. So yeah, man, I love hearing that. So yeah, let's go ahead and talk about that, because I'm interested in this story, and I know we started to get into it, and then I was like, don't tell me too much, you know what I mean? Because I want it to be like a flowing conversation. So let me ask this question.
Yeah.
When did Christ become real to you? Like, how exactly? Because you say that you were healed, right? And it was still kind of like you were appreciative, but it didn't really hit you. But when did it? When would you say?
So you to explain that, I have to explain what ministry and what religion was for me at that time. I accepted a call into Christ when I was in 2008. So my junior year, when that took place, the whole knee issue, the healing process. That's when I gave my life over to God. And then in 2011 is when I really accepted my call into ministry. So that's when, I prayed, the Lord was on my heart heavy. And this is when I was in Nebraska, still coming from Cape to Nebraska, off and on through those summer and winter. So one break I came back and I was like, you know what, I'm ready to get into ministry. I'm ready to go full out for this thing. And my pastor at the time in Nebraska prayed for me. He covered me in his blessings, and that was that. So then I go to church here in Missouri. And from 2010 to 2014, I'm serving and I'm, just learning. And then, like I said, we moved back to Nebraska. Then I moved back to Cape, and this is 2015 where I just had my son. So now this is when I'm ordained as a youth pastor, and I'm a youth pastor under Lighthouse Ministry, and I'm serving and I'm checking all the boxes. I'm going to church, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm going to church, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm going to church, I'm reading, I'm studying, I'm checking all the boxes, right? But it wasn't until 2 years ago where I can say that Christ really became real for me. And what I mean by that is I was in ministry, I was a youth pastor, I was speaking, I was doing all these different engagements, holding Bible studies in college. I was doing all of these things, taking care of my family, growing in marriage, struggling in marriage, struggling as being a father, and it was a lot going on in that time. And CJ Jackson, who is like my spiritual mentor, he's my spiritual father. He actually called me in one day, and CJ has been there from the beginning. But he called me in one day and he said that your main ministry is your family. and that you need to go take care of your family, which was the best advice he ever could have gave to me. So 2 years ago is when I actually took his advice and I stepped down to take care of my family. So when I say when Christ became real to me was I developed a relationship with a guy named Gavilan Bland. Gavilan met me outside of church one day and he said that, hey, we need to get together. And I was like, okay. And he was like, no, we need to like really get together. And I was like, okay. And he's like, no, for real, like we need to get together. So I was like, okay, let's just get together, And I was like, let's just start a Bible study, on Wednesday mornings at 6 o'clock, And he was like, bet. So me and him meeting started turning to 10 guys coming. And when I say Christ became real to me, because it was through me and his relationship over these past 2 years that it forced me to be honest with somebody. It forced me to confess. It forces me to have somebody not only hold me accountable, but for me to hold them accountable. He became like a spiritual partner. When it comes to wrestling, you have your drill partners. When it comes to basketball, you have your teammates doing your practices and things like that. And he became really my spiritual partner. Now, once again, I say that Christ became real for me because it moved past me studying to preach. It moved past me showing up on Sunday and raising my hands and giving an offering. It moved past, just showing up to church to do and say the right thing. It became a real lifestyle. It moved past, hey, how you doing? Hey, I'm good. It moved past all of those things. It really developed a real, true, genuine relationship with somebody who held me accountable and I held them accountable. And through that Bible study, which I wasn't even looking to lead in anything, the Lord really showed true fellowship. And we were honest about what we face as men, what we face as fathers, what we face as husbands, we face that service of God. How do you explain to somebody, hey, sometimes I don't want to be at home? How do you explain to somebody, sometimes I don't want to be a father? How do you explain to somebody, sometimes I don't want to be married? See, these are avenues that real men go through, and wives as well. I'm not excluding them, but these are issues that real people face. But when we just say, hey, how you doing? Oh, I'm good. I'm saved. I'm highly favored. God is good. Well, let's get past that. And so from that point 2 years ago, that's why I said my relationship with Christ became real, because he says this. He says, they worship me with their mouth, but their hearts are far from me. And if we be honest, our hearts are really far from a lot of people that we are supposed to be in relationship with. Our hearts are really far from a lot of people that we share the same pool with, maybe even share the same bed with, if we be honest, or the same house with, or the same room with. Our hearts are really far from a lot of people that we out in public look like this. But if we were to examine the hardship of the relationship, it's probably really separated and divided. So Christ became real to me when I had somebody where I was 100% transparent and naked from, and they were 100% transparent and naked in front of me.
Yeah, man. One of the things that I love about what you just said, and it took guts, is that you stepped away from a title, from a position
Yes,
of authority, in order to do what that authority, that title should be doing, right? And you're like, you know what? I'm going to go and live this out, but I'm going to go and I'm going to live this out and be real and say, man, maybe right now where I'm at, in order for me to be able to take care of my first ministry, I have to step away from this ministry, right? This part of ministry. And I feel like that a lot of times, especially as pastors, like that's a struggle with your family. You know what I mean? Like weighing those two is like, well, am I truly taking care? Am I truly nurturing my first ministry, which is right now just me and my wife? I'm about to have a son in December. So that means that even my view on ministry now has to change whenever I have a kid in December, right? It's because if it doesn't,
yes,
then
sir.
I'm going to be neglecting what God has called me to protect first, to nurture first, to make sure it's healthy first. So I just want to say, dude, that takes guts. And I really appreciate you doing that, but then you also being able to admit that, because especially whenever we're viewed as authority, it's really hard to say, hey, you know what, I'm inadequate in this part, or I'm not really living up to it in this part, but I see that I'm not, and I'm not able. So you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to step away from something that I thought and I said years ago that I would do. You know, and then once you get to that point where you're willing to do that, that's whenever God can really begin to do some incredible things through you, you know, especially with that personality and like just that thought process of God. I'm going, because a lot of times, you know, people are pushing to get to that position. People are pushing to get to that title. And you're like, well, actually, I'm willing to lay this down in order for me to get to my calling, you know.
And honestly, if I be 100% honest with you, if I had a choice to, get the title and do all the preaching events that I was doing over these last 2 years, I would take these last 2 years in a heartbeat. And honestly, if I'm just taking a step further, if I had a choice tomorrow, today, or the next year from now to continue what I've done in these last 2 years or to take a role somewhere, I would continue with the road that I'm on. Because ministry is not just a building. God is the body. Serving God, He is the body. It speaks about as Christ divided, and in the book of Ephesians, it talks about the one spirit, the one body. So like, a title or the location of a building is just a part of the body. That church over there is not the body. This ministry over there is not the body. It's just a byproduct. It's a part. So I don't ever want to get to the point ever again that I got caught up in a title, you know what I'm saying, or into a building. Nothing against buildings, nothing against titles, but as real as Christ is for me right now, I don't want to ever, miss that or get out of alignment of that.
Well, that's how you know that God is going to put you in places. And I told you this the other night. Remember when I was praying with you and for you? I was like, I never
Yes,
even
sir.
met you before. Let me pray for you. That God is going to put you in places that you're the only one that is surprised. That everyone else can see the Holy
Yeah.
Spirit. God already knows your heart, and He's going, man, I got something incredible in store for you. And there's nothing that anyone else can do to prevent this from happening, because you are truly walking out the things that you say. And again, so man, you have all of my respect in the world. That's awesome. The one thing that we haven't really talked about is you're also now an MMA fighter, right? And
Yeah.
so I want to, first of all, I want to hop back into, because most people, we heard you kind of say that you play for Southeast, for SEMO. So how did the transition go from SEMO possibly to the NFL, from the NFL to MMA? So just kind of give
Okay,
us an idea as
so
far as that.
to start the SEMO journey, I gotta mention something that I really don't like mentioning. I was a four-time state champ in high school in wrestling, and I had offers everywhere to go wrestle. And one day I just woke up, I was like, you know what, I don't want to wrestle no more. Wrestling was something I was very good at from the time I was 6, from the time I was 17. I was ranked top 5 in the country. I've been ranked number 1 a few times in the country, and I just decided one day I didn't want to wrestle anymore. And a lot of colleges, including like Nebraska and Iowa, said I was too good of a wrestler to come to their school and not wrestle. So they wanted me to take a wrestling scholarship and walk on and play football at their school. And I said, no, give the other person the walk on scholar, and they was like, no, you're too good of a wrestler. So Southeast Missouri State called me and they was like, hey, if you want to come down here and play football, you can. And I was like, I don't have to wrestle. They was like, no. I signed on the dotted line and I came to Southeast. So I spent 4 years playing, and in my senior year, that's when Coach Tom Matukowicz came on board, and he was my coach my senior year. So then after that, me and my wife got married, and our son was born in July. But prior to that, I had a couple camps, that I had an opportunity to go to, and 2 teams said that they were interested in me, but they had already drafted 2 fullbacks, and they wanted me to go to this developmental league. Well, at that time, the developmental league wasn't paying, and I had a son that was about to be born, so I stepped away from that, and I decided to take care of my family, and which was the best decision that I could have made. And going back, I'd have made it again. And then how do I get into MMA? So 2 years ago, I'm helping
Hold on
train
one
this
second.
guy. Yes, sir.
Just 1 second. I am seeing a trend here with you, bro. you have these abilities, and you have these giftings, and you have all this, and you're like, you know what? I'm on mission, right? Like, I'm on a mission that doesn't really fall, in my mission. So I'm not going to do that. So it's like wrestling. Yes, you could. Yeah, but I really don't feel like that's what I'm supposed to be doing. So I'm not going to do it. I'll go play football. Oh yeah, I really want to go and play in the NFL, but my family is my first ministry. So I'm not willing to, you know what I mean? Like jeopardize that either. So it's like either way you turn, no matter the choices that you've made, it's always been a hard, like, this is where I feel that I'm called. So this is what I'm doing. And so I'm about to let you get back into that, but I just didn't want to forget that, because I'm going, man, this dude is like, I'm literally giving up everything over here to play football, right? And now that I have these opportunities in football, I'm not willing to give up everything that I just gave up everything for, if it means that I'm going to have to sacrifice my family, my family time, my interactions with them. And I'm going, I can tell you why this dude is successful. But anyway, go ahead and go on with your, about how you got into MMA.
So then, like I said, and I appreciate your words on that as well. So about 2 years ago, actually, really, yeah, 2 years ago, I'm helping this guy train for his fight, and he says, "Hey, man, why don't you fight?" And at the time, I'm 29 now, so I was 27, and I was like, I'm too old, this, that, and the third, and at this time, I'm 315 pounds, and I was like, and he was like, "Man, you tripping?" He's like, "A lot of the fighters and the people who won their belts are, mid 30s to late 30s. Like, you got time if you really want to do it." So then I look up Daniel Cormier. And Daniel Cormier we're the same height, same build. He was a 2-time state champ. He was a wrestler. I was a wrestler. And, I just started kind of compare and contrast. He won his first belt at like 32 or 33, and I'm just like, okay, I'm 27. And then I talked to Kwaku. And Kwaku was like, "Hey, bro, like, I really feel like if this is what you want to do, like, you can do it. Like, do you know Danny Reese?" And I was like, "No, I don't know Danny." He's like, "You don't?" And he was like, "Well, bet I'm going to, hook y'all up on the phone call." I talked to Wiki. Wiki was like, "Boom, you need to get with Danny." So they make that happen. Me and Danny meet. And now, 2 years later, hold on. Yeah, 2 years later, I 4-0, 2 belts, 3 title defenses. So, yeah.
Yeah.
That's
So
how I got into MMA.
it's really funny. No offense to who you fought in the past, because I don't know anything about them, right? But I do know a little bit about fighting. I actually really like UFC, mixed martial arts. I watch all the pay-per-views, so kind of pay attention, right? I'm going like, it's a little unfair, even though you're fighting for the titles. I feel like that a dude has to step in the octagon, like, or the, whatever, with you. Because of your wrestling background. I'm like, if this dude learns to box at all, no one has wrestled at his level that he's going to be, fighting. Yeah. And then I watch you and I'm going like, man, and I'll actually show a video of one of the knockouts that I saw. I believe it's the most recently. I'll edit it in. Don't worry about it. Yeah, I could see he was really worried about getting taken down, and then he got punched in the face. And then as soon as he got punched in the face, it was like 4 or 5 punches, and then guess what? It's over. So I can totally see the advantages that you would have, right away. And then for those of you that don't know, I saw this dude, as in Ron, at Fields of Faith, and he spoke. And it was awesome. Well, like, honestly, it truly was. It was very gospel centered. It was no fluff. I was like, man, this dude is the real deal, even in his speaking. But he didn't introduce himself, and he didn't tell anyone what he did. So it was like, hey, here's, we don't know who, giving an awesome message. But what I took from that was that, man, this dude is so humble that what he's really worried about, and obviously his whole life has shown that he's on mission. Like, that's it. What is your mission? His mission was not to bring the shine onto himself, but to deliver a gospel message that other people will be able to hear about Christ and respond to. And you know what? He handled it perfectly. And bro, I just want you to know, like that's what I see in you whenever I see you doing all this. I was like, man, there's one common denominator in all this, that you won't be moved off your spot. That's it, period, right? And it's like, man, this is what I'm doing. So then I'm watching, you in, you're fighting, you're doing all these things, and I'm just going like, man, I would not want to be the dude that's on the other side of, the octagon from him. That's for sure. The other side of the cage, because I think UFC may actually have the octagon trademarked. I don't know, but the other side of the cage, that's for sure. And so it's just incredible to see. Like, even your success in MMA, your success in all these things, and kind of like you were talking about, like, you have the same resume, amateur wise, that the champions do in UFC, right? And so, I'm going like, well, if anyone's gonna do it, and I know the favor of God is on your life, and I know that in everything that you do, you're literally giving Him, the glory. As a matter of fact, this just came to me that I forgot. The reason that I initially even saw you on my radar at all, you were fighting at the arena building, and rather than promote yourself, you and Danny Reese talked about God.
Yes, sir.
You guys talked about Jesus as your savior, and as soon as I saw that, I didn't know anything. I was like, I can be friends with that dude. I don't know anything. I don't know like anything about you. I don't know your favorite color. I don't know any of your interests. I don't know nothing. But if someone is willing to get up there, we can find some commonality, if nothing else, like God, right? With Jesus and the importance of him. Like, now we can be boys. Now we can get to the point where I'm like, anything that you need, bro, I'm there, and so that was one of the things that I really felt like in my spirit. I was like, man, this dude just won. They said, you have anything to say? And he's giving Jesus the glory. I was like, well, I was waiting for you to lead an altar call, but like, all right, well, repeat this prayer after me. And like that's just being honest. And I see that, and I'm going like, man, that's incredible. Which brings me to my next question, because it requires intensity, right? And you have to be willing to punch someone in the face and be willing to get punched in the face. But you're talking about like leading your family. You're talking about speaking. You're talking about, preaching and like those sort of things. So how do you go about, like just turning that off?
Honestly, it's actually a simple answer for me. I know everybody's answer would be different, but I grew up in the hood. I grew up, in rough streets of Omaha, Nebraska, and it was a difficult time. But the thing is that I was really popular and well known with a lot of people, so I didn't have to get into a lot of fights. I actually didn't grow up fighting at all. So I don't have that anger attached to fighting as a lot of fighters do, which is actually an advantage for me. Even though I was always bigger than a lot of people, I got along with everybody. Like, the same personality you see now is what I had back in the day. So it didn't matter if this person was from this neighborhood or that neighborhood, black or white, big or small, special ed or not. Like, I hung around with everybody. So what that did for me is, like I said, I didn't have a lot of fights. I didn't grow up fighting. I knew how to fight, but I didn't grow up fighting. So I don't have that anger attached to fighting. So when I'm in the cage, it's more of a science to me. It's a sport. I don't have that rage that, oh, it's killed or be killed. Like, I don't have that type of feelings towards the style. I have a lot of respect for it. So much like wrestling was a science to me. I broke it down into moves, and if I do this, I can do this, I can do this, and then I allow it to become what we call chain wrestling. So when I'm fighting, I look at it as a science. Yes, it's dangerous. Yes, it's brutal, but I don't have that anger attached to it, and I think that allows me to, stay focused and do what needs to be done. So that way, when it comes to after the fight, there's no really turn off switch because I don't have the anger attached to it.
Dude, I love that answer. And honestly, sometimes the most simple answers are the things that just kind of like go way over our head. Cause that's one of the things that I was wondering myself, like how in the world, and then you answer that. And I'm like, dude, that makes perfectly good sense. Now I totally understand like how you can do that. And it's clearly that, and the Holy Spirit, like God is obviously like on you, right? I mean, you can just see it. Well, I don't know
Hmm.
if you can see it. I can see it. So it's one of those things that's like, yeah, I know, but how do you like shut that off and get back good with, you know what I mean? And then I'm like going like, oh wait, yeah. So you don't have anger, you don't have all this, so there's no malice in your heart. You're able to just walk in there and be like, you know what I'm gonna do? I'm going to punch him more times than he punches me and get out of the way of his punches, right? Like that's pretty much like,
Yeah.
you know, the mentality behind it. Okay, well that actually makes sense. I
Yeah.
thought it
And
was gonna be something
yeah.
something
And
else.
honestly, what's funny is that I actually prayed that. I said, Lord, and I prayed this before this fight. I said, Lord, you know I don't want to hurt anybody, but if that's what it takes to get the job done, then I'm gonna have to do it. But I don't want to hurt nobody, but I know this is a sport that I'm not about to hold back my punches or elbows or knees or kicks because of me not wanting to hurt somebody. I pray that nothing happens, and I pray that no damage is too sufficient. But if it has to go there, then it has to go there. And I'm prepared to do that.
You don't get this way how you are right now without other people speaking into your life, right? I mean, you just
Yeah.
don't. So let me ask you this question. How big of a role have other people played in your development as far as specifically, and again, I know we kind of alluded to it, but specifically as far as the MMA is concerned, as far as your walk with Christ, and also as a father and a man?
So to answer the whole thing, I got to go back to my original foundation. It's my father. My father was very tough on me. You talking about he put me had me wrestling since I was 2 years old. From the time I was 6 all the way to high school, he made me do 200 push-ups and sit-ups every single night. So my dad was very, very strict, and he at times we didn't have the best relationship, but he was everything that I needed. And what I say we didn't have the best relationship is because I didn't understand what he was trying to do at the time. When you're a kid, you just want to go and have fun, but he was training me for life, and I didn't understand that as a kid. And if I'll be honest, a lot of me resented him and hated him for that. But now as a man, I understand what he was trying to do, and I thank him for it. And me and my dad was the reason why I am the way I am, especially when it comes to life, marriage, MMA, my journey. I'm really everything I am because of him and because of how hard he was on me. So that really started my journey. And then the next person was Adrian Taylor Jr., who was an apostle at Lighthouse Ministries. He took me in and allowed me to come to the church in 2010. And the moment he helped me and helped change my life with was at that time, me and my father wasn't on a good page, and we were at a Bible study, and he mentioned the scripture, which I'd never heard at the time, was that I believe it's Matthew 5 or 6, and it says that if you don't forgive men of their trespasses, neither will God forgive you of yours. And Adrian was talking about his dad, and I was like, hold on, so you mean to tell me I got to forgive my dad? And he was like, yeah. And I hit the table and I was mad. I was like, y'all don't know what he did. We are at a man's meeting. Like, y'all don't know what he did to me. Y'all don't. At that time, I was hurt. I was angry. I was upset. I didn't understand why he was so hard on me. And it was a bad time in my life. And I was angry and I was upset. And now you got to remind you, Adrian's a small guy, and I'm fresh in college, 6 foot, 245, and he talked me down. I was like, yes, you need to forgive. Yes, you need to let that go. Like, and I was in tears and I was crying. So Adrian Taylor really, kind of really helped me in that moment and really kind of started that bridge of healing. And then I'm gonna skip one person to get to my wife. Then it was my wife. My wife, when she allowed me to be her husband and to be the father of our kids, she's the type of woman that is not going to allow me to be me. She's not going to allow me to be Ron the servant. She's not going to allow me to be Burger, which is my nickname back home. She's not going to allow me to be the MMA fighter or the preacher that everybody sees. She's going to make me be Ronald Edward Coleman Jr. And she challenges me and she makes me a better man. Now I'm a guy who makes many mistakes. I'm a husband who has made many mistakes, and she stood by me and she still stands by me, and she doesn't allow me to walk over her. So she's really the biggest impact when it comes to who I am as a person, who I am as Ronald Edward Coleman Jr., and who that person is means more to me than the fighter, the preacher, the pastor, the friend. Like, what what good does it do to be all of these things to all these other people and then not have my wife? or not have my kids. So she's really the biggest part and the success and the biggest coach, if I'll be honest, of my life. But to and I thank her for that. But the main person when it comes to putting it all together, ministry, fighting, family, and how I am as a man, and that's CJ Jackson. I met CJ Jackson in 2010 as well, and he's really my spiritual father. I can't tell you the multiple times he allowed me into his house, and I'm in his basement or his wife cooking pancakes for us, and CJ Jackson was the spiritual father that I needed. And what I mean by that is that none of the men, and no disrespect to none of the men in my family, but I didn't have a godly example of a man, right? So CJ Jackson became that, how to be a godly man, how to be a godly father, how to walk as a man of faith. He became that. He allowed me to not only be in his life, but see his life. From the time I was in college in 2010 until now, he at least called me once a week, or we have met once a week. He's actually the reason why I started training with God, as you see as all my hashtags, because he said the same way you train in sports is the same way you have to train with God. So CJ has become, not, I don't even look at him as a spiritual father, to be honest with you. I look at him as a father, and he treats me as if I'm his own son. He's been the one who's walked me in the gospel. He's been the one who walked me in my marriage, and he's been the one who's helped me with my kids. He was the one who said that I need to leave and take care of my family and make my family my first ministry. And he's been challenging me in the word. Honestly, and I know everything is God, but I am who I am right now and where I'm going because of him.
Yeah,
And
man.
for him allowing me to be his son.
And I absolutely love the fact, again, that it's one of those things that we're called to influence all those around us. And obviously you said CJ actually took the initiative as far as like looking at you and saying, hey man, you know what, we need to get together, right? And then other people in your life have been like, hey, let's get together, let's figure this thing out, let's help. And then they've been able to help you along. And then you've turned around and then been able to, also take that wisdom and apply it everywhere you go. And I also respect a man who talks about how important and influential his wife is on them and in their marriage and in their family. It's not one of, because I am one of those dudes that, like, if you bad talk your wife in front of me, I don't want to be around you. Like, even if we're boys, right? If you're like, oh, well, my wife this, my wife that, I'm like, well, we're probably not going to be hanging out very much, because I want someone who is like edifying his wife. I want someone who is, has a solid marriage, because I want to continue having a solid marriage. You know what I mean? We have to be able to, just put the things around us, or put people around us that are actually walking out what we want, right? And including marriage, including sports, including, if you want to be successful, surround yourself with successful people, even if it's completely and totally different than you. The same way whenever it comes to, like ministry or your Christian walk. If you want to be a really solid Christian, surround yourselves with guys who actually make their Christian walk and their faith a priority. And if you say that you want to be you want to be a mighty man of God, and you don't hang out with many like men of God, that's probably not true. I hear you, but it's not necessarily true. Well, dude, I really want to get to one last question. I know I'm not trying to take up all of your day here, but let me ask this question, because I feel like that it's really important, especially seeing someone in your situation, because you had, everything in your life was pretty much ahead of you, just based upon your wrestling abilities, right? It's like, man, I can go wherever I want, which is really impressive, though, that you didn't go to Iowa. I just want to say that, as far as, or yeah. I mean, because again, I know a little bit about wrestling. If Iowa's even talking to you, if they pick up the phone, you're legit. Right. I mean,
yeah, they offer me a full ride.
Right. So that means that, yeah, you're pretty decent. Right. Okay. So then you're like, you know what? I'm not going to go do that. I'm going to go play football. And then you go and play football, and then it's like, oh, well, you can go do this. And then you're like, well, actually, I know that I really was called to be, or I felt like that I was called to be a pastor, but man, I just feel like that I'm going to go and walk this out instead. So you've really been a man of like concrete principles and thoughts, and just kind of like walk through that, whatever that looks like. So let me ask this question then. What would you say to somebody that is struggling with this next big step? And I feel like that you're someone that can really speak to this because your life has been filled with next big steps, and it seems like that you haven't really wavered as far as your decision making. Maybe internally it was a struggle and you were praying about it, seeking out God, like all of us have gone through that. But then whenever you do make those difficult choices, those are the people again that I really want to speak to. So what would you say as far as advice to someone who is sitting here struggling today with that next big step?
To answer that question, I just have to be honest. You have to have everybody say, "Well, seek wise counsel." Well, wise counsel doesn't always make you make the right decision. There's wise counsel everywhere. You could scroll on YouTube and look up, power, and they'll give you people talk about power. You can look up faith, and people will be talking about faith. And you can look up the 10 keys to success, and they'll give you 10 key. I mean, tons of videos. So it's not so much. Seeking out guidance. You have to have wisdom from the person you're receiving it from, and then you also have to have authentic relationship from that person, because it's easy to make a decision, but it's the follow up, and it's the when like I spoke about, everybody starts something, it's going so good, but then you hit a pitfall and you can't go back to that same YouTube channel and find that same advice. You can't go back to that same person sometimes. So what I mean by that is that you not only have to get wisdom, but the person that you're getting the wisdom from, you should have an authentic relationship with, meaning that they can tell you when you're out of order, and you can tell them when you feel like they're out of order. And the reason why I say that, because you think about Peter, and I use this illustration a lot, is that you see Peter, he's on the boat, and he says, "Christ, is that you?" And he said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Well, bid me to come out there." And he starts to walk on the water. And as he's walking, he had every intention to making it to Christ, but he saw the storms and he saw everything happening, and he began to sink. And Jesus pulls his hand up and says, "Why did you doubt?" And I believe in my heart, and I always say in the book of Ron Coleman, I believe that he would have made it if his boys would have got out the boat with him. Like if Peter wasn't walking by himself, I believe that his boys and him would have made it. So what I mean by not just seeking out advice and seeking out people who have wisdom, but you also have to seek out that person that you have authentic relationship with, that the person that you're getting your guidance from, not only should they be wise, but you should have an authentic relationship with them. Why? Because they're not only going to direct you on if this is a good decision or a bad decision, but they're also going to walk with you through the process. They're not here to just say, "Hey, I gave them some good news," and they go on with it. Like they're going to say, "Hey, no, I told you that you should go to college. Hey, how is college going? How was your first week of class? How was this paper? How was the semester? How was the course?" Like they're going to walk with you every single step of the way. So when it comes to getting advice about that next step, my greatest thing is one, don't be afraid of fear of failure. Two, if you're getting wisdom from somebody, make sure it's from somebody that you have authentic relationship with, that's willing to not only give you the information, but walk you through the whole process of success.
Man, yeah, that was actually a really, really amazing answer. So, yeah, I'm like, yeah, do you want to come and preach someday, dude? but yeah, man.
Yes, I don't mind anytime. Just hit me up.
Right. And for those of you that are watching, yes, Ron Coleman will be coming and speaking at my youth group sometime soon. We're going to be working that out. But one of the things that, stands out to me the most in that is just how, it is all about relationship. It is all about having an understanding that you can't just, and this is my advice for people who are giving advice, right? You shouldn't be offering advice to someone that that's literally the only amount of effort you're willing to put into them. Right. So if someone comes to you and says, "Hey, I need some advice in this," if you aren't willing to walk them through that rather than that one conversation, maybe you should guide them towards someone who actually is going to be the person who's walking through it. Because what you don't want to do is give someone advice, then you're not going to walk with them through it. And then what winds up happening is then they go to somebody else and they say, "Hey, this is what I was told to do. I need to do that." And then that person not actually be capable of walking them through that. And they may give them some completely and totally different form of advice or something else. And now all of a sudden you got all this confusion, and that's not what we need as far as in the body of Christ today, especially. I have one last thing for you, and that's just, is there anything else that we didn't cover that you're like, man, after going through this whole interview, I really wish that we would have covered this?
Yeah, and the biggest thing about whatever you're facing in life is that never be afraid to try again. When I didn't make it to the NFL, when I didn't get drafted, let me say that. I felt like everything that I worked for was over. Like you spend all this time and you're like, yes, I've been working, I'm gonna make it to the NFL. Like that's was my big dream, you right? And it didn't work out. And I went through a state where I didn't know who I was. Now, mind you, everything was going good. Like I had the family, and my wife was good. I had my master's in psychology. Like, like life was on the outside good, but I was still struggling with me. Like I felt like I still needed something. Not that my family wasn't good enough, not that my wife wasn't good enough, my friends, it wasn't that. Just like I still felt like I had something to offer. And I almost allowed the fear of failure for me not to take that next step. And no matter how many times you have failed, no matter what has transpired in your life, you never know the reason why, right? And it's like, well, why God? Why God? Why God? Well, you might not find that why God, but what I would tell you is that He has resources for your next step if you allow yourself to take that next step. Sometimes the answer is no. And I think that was the biggest thing that I had to understand, that sometimes the answer is no, but that doesn't mean that every answer after that is still no. And that was the biggest thing that I learned in this process. Like for me going to the NFL, the answer was no. But that doesn't mean that the preparation that I took wasn't meant for the moment that I'm walking in now, or the moment that I will be walking in, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years from now. Who knows what that information will be. But just don't be afraid to take that next step.
Yeah, man, absolutely incredible, dude. Again, I really appreciate you taking the time to speak with us today. I hope that, you've enjoyed it as well, and really feel like, that God has used this time for you to impart some wisdom that you have, and that whoever is, listening to this is truly going to be blessed. Well, guys, that's pretty much all that I've got. Again, my name is Jonathan Cunningham, a.k.a. PJ at the Point. My man here is Ron Coleman Jr. Hey, let them know what your Instagram is real quick.
So Facebook and Instagram is Facebook is Ronald Coleman Jr. Ronald Coleman Jr. Sorry about that. And Instagram is at Ron the Servant. At Ron the Servant or at Ron the Servant Coleman. With Twitter and stuff, you got to mess with the names, but yeah, pretty much at Ron the Servant Coleman. Yep.
Just look for the dude that's knocking other people out, and then you'll be able to find him. Right? That's pretty much how this goes. All right, Ron. If you don't mind, just go ahead and stay on for just 1 second. I'm gonna go ahead and run this through. I just want to decompress with you. All right.
Thanks for listening to Crushing It for the Kingdom. Please be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts or find us on any major streaming platform. If you'd like further information on how to crush it for the kingdom, just search PJ at the Point on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter for more info.